My name is Elizabeth Lee. I am here with the Center of Investment and Wealth Management with SheVest specifically. We're really excited to have you here today for Wealth Building Tips for Women with Kimberly Davis. And we're so excited to host today's session with Women Investing in Securities Education, WISE. So first of all, I wanted to take the time to really thank you all. Thank you as attendees for taking the time to invest in yourself, to listen to us, to join us here today for some amazing education, and really invest your energy in this. And we really appreciate your time, your attention, and can't wait for this session. I also want to thank WISE, who is, like I mentioned earlier, our co-host. We have an amazing session and program planned today because of WISE, and we're so honored to be partners. Last but not least, I really wanted to give an amazing thank you, big shout out to Kimberly Davis, who is the author of The Fiscal Feminist. We'll talk a little bit more about her bio in a second, but again, I just wanted to thank you all for being here. We're so honored for your presence, so honored to have you here today. A couple of housekeeping items before we move on to today's webinar. You'll notice that the Q&A panel is available for you throughout the session, so please leave your questions in there. We'll answer them near the end of today's call during the Q&A time. So please let us know what's on your mind. This session is completely and entirely for you because we are all focused on serving you. I also wanted to highlight that at the end of today's session, we will be having a survey. So as soon as you exit the Zoom webinar, you'll be receiving a survey, and we would love to hear your thoughts there as well. On behalf of WISE and SheVest, we would really love to hear your feedback because we want to make our education programming more impactful, more powerful for you. If there are any questions that you didn't get to ask or we didn't get a chance to answer, feel free to leave them in the survey as well, but please also leave your email as it is an anonymous survey. So we want to make sure you get your answers, but you're going to have to tell us who you are. So without further ado, I wanted to make some high-level introductions. I am so excited to be here on behalf of the Center of Investment and Wealth Management from UCI's Paul Merage School of Business. At the center, they are focused on offering leadership and serving as a resource for financial education with goals of increasing financial literacy, minimizing financial instability, and training the next generation of finance industry leaders. Really excited to represent SheVest, where our mission is to motivate women of every socioeconomic standing to not only develop financial literacy, but to grow comfortable in their command of money management. Today's session was actually entirely inspired by WISE's 25 WISE tips for building wealth. So we are just so honored to be able to co-host the session because we drew so much inspiration from you and all the work that you do at our community, Angela. And I also want to take the chance to do the amazing honor of introducing our guest speaker today, Kimberly Davis, who you also see on screen. So she is the author of The Fiscal Feminist, and she is a managing director and partner at the Bahnsen Group, a private wealth management firm operating out of Newport Beach, California. Prior to her time there, she was a corporate securities lawyer and a banker. Kimberly specializes in personal wealth advising, financial, retirement, and estate planning solutions for high net worth individuals and multi-generational families. As a certified divorce financial analyst, Kimberly's proficiency also includes helping her clients transition to financial independence after life-changing events such as death or divorce. Kimberly established The Fiscal Feminist, a platform from which she strongly advocates for women through her passion to empower and educate them concerning their finances. Her mission is to help all women, mothers, daughters, professional women, divorced women, widowed women, women of all ages and wealth levels, to embrace their responsibility to themselves to achieve solid financial footing in both calm and turbulent times. As I mentioned before, she is the author of The Fiscal Feminist, a financial wake-up call for women, which you can find on Amazon and at your local bookstore. And she's also on podcast, The Fiscal Feminist. You can also find her on Instagram and TikTok at The Fiscal Feminist. So thank you all. Thank you, ladies, for being here.
Thank you for
thanks,
having me.
Elizabeth. Thank
Of
you
course.
so much for
Of
the
course.
beautiful words, beautiful introduction. Hello, everyone. Let me add my welcome. I'm Angela Daly, Wise CEO. We have a trifecta here tonight. We have SheVest, we have Wise, we have the Fiscal Feminist, all with the same mission, similar vision of financial empowerment for females of all ages and all socioeconomic backgrounds. We believe if you manage your money better, you're going to have more options and more opportunities in life. Survey after survey tells us that women lack confidence for investing. Only 9% of women believe they are better investors than men. 56% confessed to Merrill Lynch that they have a fear of getting started investing. And all this is very ironic because study after study says that women make better investors than men. So we have a lot of work to do, build up our confidence. So we're going to get started here. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us. Wise, SheVest, the Mirage School. So I want to start from the very beginning here. What is a fiscal feminist?
Well, a fiscal feminist, obviously the word feminist is a bit of a lightning rod. It can mean many things to many different people. And over the years, it has evolved, right? What a feminist is. There was the first wave of feminism in the 19th century and then in the 20th century. And now I think we're into the third wave. But to me, what it meant in the title of my platform, The Fiscal Feminist, was it is a woman who is seeking empowerment and is willing to take charge of her own destiny. To me, that is not living in ignorance and being really proactive about, taking charge of your life, both in all ways, but mainly in a financial way. That's why I called it the fiscal feminist, and that you're not expecting others to you're not relying on others to kind of help you get through this financial journey that each of us are on as an individual. And, in my mind, there is no Prince Charming, there's no Princess Charming, there's no charming. You have to be the person that directs your own ship. So it's really about becoming CEO of your own life. That's what it means to me. If you are a fiscal feminist, you're a woman who is proactively taking charge of your holistic financial picture. You are engaged in your life. You're not living in denial, and you're not waiting for someone to swoop in and make everything work out for you. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
I'm interested to hear you call this not waiting for Prince Charming. For Wise, at our first conference back 25 years ago, that was the theme. Prince Charming isn't coming. So thank you for that, Kimberly.
There is no charming. Charming isn't showing up.
Yeah,
right,
we're
exactly.
responsible for ourselves. So you have told me that you sacrificed many evenings, many weekends to produce this book. It was a huge endeavor, a big, big project for you. What propelled you to do this?
Well, I've had a kind of circuitous journey in my career, and we'll talk about that later. But I was firmly in my wealth management practice, and I really wanted to start this platform to help women of all economic strata and whatever role they're currently in life, whatever age, to kind of navigate all of these waters. And I look at financial things very holistically. It could be anywhere from intentional career choices to how you handle your money in your relationships, to personal finance, to investment strategy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I started off by writing blogs. It was something I just did, and we put them on the Bonson Group website, and I sent them out in a newsletter. And that was really the beginning of this whole book writing thing. And as I started writing blogs, week in and week out, it just, I'm kind of a big picture gal. I was like, you know what? I think I'll write a book. And I did that in a very cavalier fashion, not quite understanding everything that was involved in that. I think I'm going to do that. But that was really the first thing that I wanted to write, like a holistic roadmap of a book that was different from just a personal finance book or an investment strategy book, but really covered all the topics of all the different principles and points that we have to think about to be very organized financially. Women are living longer than their male counterparts. They still are making 82 cents on the dollar. They are still having to play catch up to build their net worth. And many of us now are primary breadwinners. And we also are doing 75% of the care, whether it's in the home for children or with our elderly parents. So it seemed to me it was almost urgent that I share my knowledge from practicing law as a corporate securities lawyer, being an investment banker, and then finally now being a wealth manager, and also to share my story, which was kind of a mess. And I made a lot of really dumb mistakes. And I thought, well, if I can make all these dumb mistakes with all the background I have in finance, then anyone can make a mistake. So I'd like to write a book that guides women to not do all the stupid things I did, and also give them all the tools and a handbook to follow so that they can be financially successful, healthy, and calm.
Well, that's a beautiful way of expressing why you got into this book. I like it. We've all made mistakes in our lives. And, people ask why do you focus on women? Well, there are some gender specific issues, and you mentioned some of them, the longevity, the pay gap, the fact that wage gaps, and also career gaps. So that was very generous of you to take this time, because it was an enormous project. So, okay, so now you in your book, you mentioned that there are 5 steps to start building wealth. Tell us about these steps. How do we get started with them?
Right. So there's many different components to building wealth. On a personal finance level, there are these 5 steps. And they are: create a budget. And as I call it in my book, create your badass budget, because a budget is a leading indicator of your financial health. And it's really, really important that we understand the money that we have coming in and the money going out. I think a lot of us don't want to really think about it too much. And in this day and age, with the ability to spend money without ever using actual money, you can, put your phone to a thing, or you can use it, you can go online and you don't even remember you're spending money, right? So it's really easy to spend a lot of money that you don't know that you're spending, because you're actually not physically taking out cash and counting it. So I don't think a lot of people want to take the time to understand just the simple basics of money coming in, money going out. And that will be the beginning of a budget. Now, there are many ways that we can budget now that are very easy. There are so many apps. They make them just simple as can be. We can put alerts when we're spending what we shouldn't be spending, and it will help us think about, there is the rule of thumb, 50% to necessities, 30% discretionary spending, and 20% to paying down debt or investing. That's kind of the rule of thumb about budgeting. But the first thing would be a budget. The second thing is to eliminate credit card debt. If you have debt, mainly there's good debt and there's bad debt, and it's okay to have credit card debt if you pay it off every month. Obviously, if you have a mortgage, that's good debt if you're keeping up with it. But credit card debt, if you're living over your means and your budget is reflecting that, what you're usually going to use to pay for the delta, the amount that you can't afford out of your actual cash flow, is going to be a credit card. And for most people, it can run away with you. I have been a victim of this when I went through my divorce. It was very long. It was very protracted. I had children in high school. I had a ex-husband who, when I finally did get the decree, did not pay on the decree. He defaulted. So when I was trying to struggle to make ends meet, what did I do? I used my credit cards to make up for the difference. And it ended up being really a burgeoning problem for me that affected my health, my mental state. It's just really debilitating. So you have to eliminate credit card debt before you do anything else. Don't invest, don't do anything until you eliminate the credit card debt. That, coupled with maintaining a good credit score. Be very aware of your credit score. You can always find out what it is. There's free ways now with Credit Karma and all that. You can also sign up for Experian. I check my credit score every month, and especially if you're commingling debt with somebody else, partner, you absolutely want to change, be looking at that all the time, because you don't know what the other person is up to. You don't have a totally transparent relationship. And further, it will influence the terms upon which you can borrow, buy a house, lease apartment, so on and so forth. So it has a very big trickle down effect. Fourth thing is very important: establish an emergency fund. You need to have 4 to 6 months, and I prefer 6 months of liquidity. That's just cash on hand. Some people will say, why can't I invest it in the stock market? Don't do that, because if you need that money and there's a down day or a down period and you have, a medical expense, or you've lost your job, or even if you want to have the ability to pivot and change your career, having an emergency fund is really important. And a lot of people in the United States do not have one. Some people, I think the average amount that people have is like $500, and that's not going to get you through a really bad period. So emergency fund. And then the very last thing I always say is, and then after you have the emergency fund, you can, obviously there's retirement planning. You need to max out on your 401k or contribute to an IRA. And then you can start investing in a meaningful way once you do those 5 things. But my fifth thing is have fun while you're doing the budgeting and paying the credit card debt, because actually budgeting, look at it as a yes thing. When you budget and how much money you have, and you can start living within those parameters, it allows you to say yes to the things that you really want to do in an intentional way. So if you want to go on that European vacation, or you want to buy those shoes, then you can do it with not a heavy heart when you come back from vacation and you've got this burgeoning credit card bill that you can't pay. You budgeted for it, you paid for it, and it's a yes budget. So I would say, look at it as the equivalent of self-help and self-care. It's like going to the doctor. You go to the doctor when you need to have a checkup if you're not feeling well. If you don't look into your finances and budget, you might be too late and you might be terminally ill. So it's a kind of I think it's a happy thing, because it shows that you're taking the initiative to take control and accomplish all those things that you really want to do, and start building your net worth so that you can do even more. So it's just like a great big positive force in your life, all from doing a budget. I 100% promise you this is true, because I did it.
I love this, Kimberly. We have been told by many financial planners that the hardest thing for them to get their clients to do is get a budget down and realize what is coming in and what is coming out. So I want to follow up with a little fun thing. So I love this yes budget. So as a practitioner of retail therapy, you tell me it's okay to spend
within limits, right? So, and that's the thing, is if you want to buy something and you want to buy something, because I, like you, I'm no stranger to a pair of shoes, right? This is my go-to thing when I'm feeling bad for myself. How many shoes can I wear? Many. But now I know, don't just, scroll through Instagram and something pops up and you just hit, I'll buy it. I am very intentional about doing that, because I can tell you this. When I look at my credit cards every month after I pay them off and they have a zero balance, I get more pleasure and just happiness and feeling of fulfillment. I'm proud of myself than I do by looking or wearing that pair of shoes. So it has this way of, once you start feeling proud of yourself for doing this, and you know that when you do buy something, you actually can afford it, it's empowering, and it makes you feel virtuous in some ways. So I don't want to be stressed about I don't want to be afraid to open up my Chase Visa credit card bill or my American Express card. I don't want to go online and be paralyzed by fear and look at it and think, oh, dang, how am I going to pay this off? It's going to take me 100 years. So if we should begin the way we intend to end. So just look at it as a means to an end. If you know how much money is coming in and how much money is going out, and that is the most basic thing you need to know. If you are spending more than you have coming in, then you have to figure out a few things. A, why are you spending more than that's coming in? What do you have to do to downsize or to eliminate certain expenses? Once you shore up all of the things I just mentioned, and you get all your debt in order and you have some liquidity, this opens the door for all sorts of possibilities. So there may be a little hard work at the beginning. It may be a little uncomfortable because you have to face your demons. But man, once you do it and you start feeling that power of saying, I can actually go on that vacation, and I put away money over the past several months specifically for it. I know when I come home from the vacation, I am not going to be devastated by my credit card bill and be paying off this vacation over the next 12 months. That to me is absolute bliss.
It is bliss. You know, Elizabeth mentioned our wise tips, 25 tips to wealth building that we published on our occasion of our 25th anniversary. And one that was contributed by me, because it was from my mother, was always live a little below your means. So you have that emergency money. It's a great feeling of independence.
It is, and it's hard to do. I mean, we live in a culture of FOMO. We are all looking at social media, all the things that people are doing, where they're going on vacations. And, it's easy to get caught up in that and say, I want to do that too. And if you have a credit card and a credit line, it's easy to just slam down the credit card and, be on the next trip to Greece. I am as much a victim of that as anybody else, but I have had several situations in my life where I have had burgeoning debt, and it has been so unpleasant that I've literally, honestly, when I went through the whole divorce thing, because you're incurring legal bills, and then I had credit card bills, and I had children at home at the time, I was just physically sick. I could not sleep for the 4 or 5 years this whole long thing took me to get through. So part of that was out of necessity, but part of it required me to just consistently downsize every year and just make things smaller and smaller until I could get my mojo back and start, I got my job and I start making more money, and then I could start paying all this stuff down and just get some, wind beneath my wings, so to speak. So it's just one of those things. Life is an inextricable part of our money is an inextricable part of our lives, right? We can't get rid of it. It's part of survival. So whether we like it or not, we actually have to think about it and be intentional about it. And that goes, and money is related to many things in our lives. It's involved in our relationships. It's involved in our intentional career choices. It's involved in whether or not we negotiate about things. So all of this stuff, all of these points are about money, some of them directly, some of them not so directly, but they all lead to building our net worth and making sure that as we grow older, we have security, and in our old age and in retirement, that we are able to live in dignity and also make sure that we can care for ourselves and our medical expenses. So it's a long journey, and luckily we're all living longer. So we need to view it as such and take, all the actions that need to be taken to accomplish those goals.
So, Kimberly, I'm glad you mentioned this relationship of love and money. You talk a lot about this. You have talked about it in your podcasts and book, et cetera. So you are a big proponent of talking about money before you commingle your funds and before
Correct.
you get married. But these are difficult conversations. I've heard people say it's easier to talk about sex than money. So how do you start this conversation with your partner?
Well, the thing about money, and I talked about this quite a lot. I talk a lot about relationships and money. And again, our money personalities and our money languages frame our relationship with money and how we relate to other people and communicate with them. Most people think that, we all know that money can be the biggest factor in destroying marital happiness, and a lot of divorces occur because of money issues. And 82% of couples say that most of their problems are around money. So that's more than half. Now, most people think that people fight about the lack of money, and that's not true. What studies have found is that most people fight about how money is spent. And that goes back to our money personalities and our money languages. And so why I think it's a real manifestation of true love and trust in your partner when you can start talking about money openly, because it will be a part of your relationship, especially if you're going to cohabit or if you're going to get married. And the way I think women have had a problem talking about this because throughout history, it has not been part of the narrative for women to talk about money in any way. So we've always been told to be good, be nurturing, and not to kind of discuss this topic. It's very much in a man's world. That's evolved over time, but we still have a lot of anachronistic views about this. And I know I talk a lot about prenups. I think everyone should have a prenup. It's not just for rich people. But the beginning part of even getting to that is when you start getting serious with someone and you're thinking of combining your living space and perhaps your money, you need to really have a talk to understand who that person is. I think if I had had some counseling with my first husband about this, two things would have happened. We would have either figured out how we are so different in our relationships and the way we express ourselves with money, or we would have just never gotten married because it was not ever going to come together. So there are these different money personalities, and I'll just go through them very quickly. But there's a compulsive saver, compulsive spender, a compulsive moneymaker, the saver splurger, a person who's indifferent because maybe they've inherited wealth. There's a worrier, and then there's a gambler. And then these money personalities are then, kind of expressed through our money languages. So we have people who equate money as being the most significant thing in providing a good lifestyle for their family. So that's how they express their love. Or they're the analytical types where they only care about security and protection. So they will forego any current benefit or pleasure from money just because they want to save for the future and protect their family. Then you have other people that will give all their money away because they love people and they're very amiable. And that's how they express their love and affection. And then there are just other people who just spend money because they associate it with prestige and their self-confidence. So if you combine someone who's a compulsive saver with somebody who's a compulsive giver because that's how they express love, there may be some problems there along the way because they don't share the same money values about how money is spent. So you don't have to make it confrontational. It can just be a conversation, just as you would say with someone, well, do you want to have kids? It's the same kind of idea, right? What's our relationship going to look like? And then how do we both feel about money? What are our money goals? What is your goals with money? What are my goals? And how are we going to combine them? And then, just also, I think being very transparent about your own money skeletons. If you're carrying a lot of debt and you're about to get married, well, you should be telling your partner about that because that could become part of their problem down the road. Or if you have obligations that they don't know about, maybe you have alimony or child support, and both people are stakeholders in the relationship. So we need to have these open, honest discussions about what our financial situation is, what our financial goals are, what we value about money, and how we want to use our money so that the relationship can then move together as opposed to two, forces kind of against each other, which ultimately leads to the relationship ending. So I think it's an expression of love. I think it's an expression of confidence in the relationship. And honestly, if people don't want to talk to you about money and you're about to commit to them in a significant way, I personally would just run for the hill. I would go the other direction.
Well, Kimberly, you mentioned, by the way, all good advice. There's personalities. I mean, sometimes you're in conflicting, but hopefully there's a lot of compromise that can be made with different money personalities. But you mentioned the prenup, and you also mentioned most of us think of a prenuptial agreement for the wealthy, either one or both come into a marriage with significant assets. But you believe everybody should have a prenup. Talk to us about this. Why, if I have no significant assets going into a marriage and my husband or partner does not either, why do we need a prenup?
Well, because people aren't static, thank God. And we are organic, growing people, not only in our lives, but with our money. And, just as a little note here, 30% of all millennials have prenups. And the reason they do is because a lot of millennials have student debt. So, it's not just about, it's about many things. But, a lot of people are going to take a break from the workplace, perhaps, because they have children or they're going to have to do caregiving, whether it's the man or the woman. Again, I aim my conversations towards women because I don't think enough women really get the advice they need. And there's plenty of people who talk to men, but I, had my daughter recently got married. She's 31 years old. She is a lawyer in New York City, and she's married to someone who's in political PR. They both have good jobs. She is doing economically a little, she's making more money, but this goes for everyone. If you think down the road, one of the people in the partnership is going to step away from the workforce, even if it's for a part-time amount or for a extended period of years, whatever it is, it's helpful to have a formula in the prenup, which would say, this is what we put in my daughter's. If you come out of the workplace, we take 60% of what she was making, max out what she would have been contributing to her 401k, what she would have been contributing to her Social Security, and then you add that up for the amount of time that you're out. You put an inflation rider on there, 2%, and that's at least the baseline amount of money that anyone who does the caregiving, the invisible labor, gets paid. Because often in divorces, and I know this happened in my divorce, I made some decisions to support my ex-husband's career. I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, and I didn't get any benefit from any of that economically. I had a very great career that I stepped away from, and I did make a decision to move abroad for someone else's career, which in retrospect, I would not have done now. But the point being is, if there had been a prenup, there would have at least been a base amount of money that would be coming my way because we had addressed it in the prenup. And I also think for people who are going to live together, cohabitation agreements are very important, because when you are not protected by marital laws, then you need to be very clear in cohabitation how you're going to buy property together, who owns what. And then from there, you can decide, if you are going to live in perpetuity together, if you have heirs, what that's going to look like. That can all be put in an agreement, but then there's no confusion, like these are going to be the expenses I pay for. Those are going to be expenses you pay for. And then these are the things we're going to do together. But a prenup allows you to address a lot of things that in a community property state, for example, would not be addressed if you did not have a prenup. So most young people who are getting married, they are at the beginning of their careers, but they're going to go on to make more and more money, and they may step out of the workforce, or there may be other things that they want to protect. So one other thing I want to say on this is I really believe that when you do commingle, you should be very intentional about it. I do not believe that because you get married that you should just commingle everything from day one. I did that in my first marriage. It was a very common thing to do in 1987 when I got married the first time. And you would just open a joint checking account and that's it. You did everything like that. So now I would say for people, make sure if you have money that you've invested prior to marriage, that's your individual account. It's helpful if you have it in your own trust, but you don't necessarily have to. If you have it in individual account, you don't commingle it. It will say your separate property, but then be intentional with your partner about how you commingle. So in my daughter's case, I'll use her as an example. They put both of their paychecks into their separate accounts, and then they have a joint account, and they contribute a certain amount of money that they've decided on into that joint account. That way they can keep some money separate. So if down the road something occurs, they've got their separate property. Also, with respect to commingling debt, have maybe one joint card, but also keep your own credit card, because it's very important to maintain your own credit. When a lot of women get divorced and they haven't had their own credit, they have no credit when they get divorced, and it's very hard to start a life without credit.
Kimberly, I hope others listening in were enlightened. There were a lot of points that you brought up that I really personally had not thought about, primarily that stay at home. Well, frankly, I never stayed at home, so it wasn't applicable to me. But that if you stay at home, there should be some kind of compensation put aside in retirement accounts, which is why women fall short in their retirement. They take too many breaks. And
it's not only just about the retirement account. It's like you're not contributing to your 401k. You're not contributing to Social Security. Now, we, as a society, we could decide to vote for Social Security for stay-at-home people, caregivers, because this is an important part of society, right? There is a thing that is called invisible labor, and that is all the labor that mainly women do, because 75% of all caregiving is done by women. And even when they are the primary breadwinner, even when they make more money than their husband. I've read studies where women who make more money than their husbands, even in this day and age, will lie about it and say they make less than their husband. So we still have a lot of these anachronistic things kicking around. But for a base level, when you're trying to transition from, into a new life and you don't have enough money to do that because all the work you've been doing, nobody paid you for, then it means it's going to not only affect your current life, but your retirement, as you say, as well. So all these things, it's like I experienced a gray divorce at the age of 53. And it really, I'm going to be playing catch up for a very long time to overcome that. I was very lucky to find the job I did at 54. But, I had a resume that allowed me to do that. But it's just, whether it's the man or the woman staying home, it's just a way of protecting those people. Also, there is a thing called the motherhood penalty. For every child that a woman has, her pay will go down 4%. For every child that a man has, his pay will go up 6%, because people still think men, are the caregivers financially of the family. So women kind of have all these hits along the way. And we need to try to take steps in any way we can to make sure that stops happening, so that they too can build their net worth. And even women who are married, I mean, many of them do outlive their husbands. So we have a lot more single women navigating through our elderly years. And so just from that perspective, being on top of all this stuff is so important, because we might still be kicking around at 90 years old, and we need to know what the score is.
So true. So true. And I know I see a lot of models going out to 100, which is kind of scary. But, where I see we have a lot of questions in the Q&A section. So I want to just move on the last few minutes that we have, Kimberly. As I mentioned, WISE always closes with a career journey story. We find that's really inspiration, a very popular portion of our programming. So in the few minutes we have left, I want the audience to hear about your career journey that started out as a corporate lawyer and ends up as a financial planner. So just give us a little highlights of this very extraordinary journey that you've had.
Well, thank you very much, Angela, for your kind words. Well, I was an only child. I didn't come from tons of money, but my parents always kind of encouraged me. I was kind of a nerd until my mother made me try out for cheerleading. So she was just like, yeah, you're such a nerd. You need to get with it and become more engaging. And also she made me get contact lenses because I also look like a nerd. So all of those things. And I was lucky. I was smart. I got a scholarship. I went to Georgetown. Went to law school, and my big dream was always just to go live in New York City, and I wanted to be a lawyer. So somehow I managed to do that, and I went to New York, and I became a corporate securities lawyer in the 80s. And, remember, this was the time of Gloria Steinem and the women's liberation movement, as they called it back then. And, you could do it all. You could bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, never let you forget you're a man, the whole 9 yards. And so it was an exciting time. I went to Wall Street. I did big deals. I was involved in a lot of IPOs, initial public offerings. I did a lot of deals of all sorts, limited partnerships, master limited partnerships, some acquisition. And I was lucky. I had I also had some tax background. So I had a very great career. Then I also had an economics and finance background. So as a lawyer, I was getting really tired of writing all the papers and staying up all night long most of the time. So I decided I wanted to become a banker, and then I was able to transition, and I found a job as an investment banker. And I was doing some asset-based financing and project financing in that realm. Then I got married, and I went on to my next career, where I had 3 children, became a stay-at-home mom. And then I moved to England with my husband, who was in private equity at the time at JP Morgan. So I put my career on hold because I thought we were only going for 2 years. 30 years later, he still lives there, and I lived there for 14 years. So while I was in England, there was a bit of a lull, because I couldn't do what I did there. So what I did do was not on purpose, but it just happened. I inadvertently started a fashion company because I've always loved clothing. And I ended up, and I don't have enough time to tell the story, but this is basically what happened. I was doing some stuff around my kitchen table. It turned into more. I ended up selling a 20-piece collection twice a year to Saks Fifth Avenue and was in their 10 best stores and designed all these clothes that came out of my head because I love art. But then I realized I hated that business because now I was a clothing manufacturer and I had a workroom and I had employees. And I was like, this isn't what I want. My kids are teenagers. This is horrible. I hate clothes. Then I went on to get involved in education over there. And I did some work in helping to build a school, which was kind of another passion of mine, worked with the government. And then at that point, the marriage was falling apart. And I was like, I want to come back to the United States. So I came back with my 3 kids. My ex-husband stayed there. And we went through this long, protracted divorce. And while I was going through it, I had a lot of financial problems as I was trying to acclimate to being back in the United States, get my children sorted out, keep a living roof over our head. And then at one point, it just became very clear that whether I was still involved in going back and forth to England for the divorce, I had to get another job because we were literally we were running out of money and I needed to make money. And I needed to make sure that I could get health insurance. So long story short, I got a job at Morgan Stanley and became a financial advisor. I went through the advisory program and then I got a job at the Bahnsen Group, I was at the Irvine office and I ended up going to Newport to work with David Bahnsen. And from there, I just worked my tail off, grew my book of business. And now I'm a managing director and partner at the Bahnsen Group. And we left Morgan Stanley and became independent. And now we manage, there's 4 partners and we have now 50 people in our group that used to be 5 and we manage $4.5 billion. And I have a pretty sizable book of business. And if you had told me this was going to be my life in 2009, I would have said, I don't know who you're talking about, but yeah, so that's my career, but I'm always willing to pivot. I'm always willing to entertain opportunities that are put in front of me. I believe that there is the universe or divine intervention or whatever. If there's an opportunity in front of me, it's up to me to capitalize on it. And I'm very resilient and I think you need to be. And one other thing is I negotiate. All women should negotiate. You must advocate for yourself on a macro and micro level. Advocate in your office. And there are ways to do that. Read my book. I talk about it. And advocate in your personal space too. I mean, we should be asking people to help us around the house a little bit more.
Well, Kimberly, I have to tell you that with Wise's programming over the last 10 years, we've talked to literally dozens of women about their career paths, and never have we heard something with so many pivots. So congrats on that. You're going to win that.
I'm the queen of the pivot. Yes.
Yes, the queen of the pivot. I think
this is going to be my career now until I'm done. Well, this is it now.
Well, fabulous stories. I wish we had more time. So Elizabeth, I know we have a lot of questions here. So let's get to it.
Sounds great. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Kimberly. That was an amazing conversation. For those of you who have not gone to wiseinvestors.org, please visit them. For those of you who have not heard of the Fiscal Feminist, now you have. Please go see her in your local bookstore and follow her on TikTok, Instagram, wherever podcasts are found at The Fiscal Feminist. So hopefully that actually knocks out a good number of our questions, but because we have a flood of them, Kimberly, you just did so well. People want to talk to you.
I'm ready. I love that. That's the best part of this.
Great. Right off the bat, one question that came in was about what's the best way to reach you? What's the best way to reach you if they want to connect with you, if they want to have a consultation? What would you
So
prefer?
you can email me at kim@thefiscalfeminist.com. And that's kind of my Fiscal Feminist email. You can go on Instagram and message me. That works too. Yeah, those are the 2 best ways I think to get in touch with me. Kim at the Fiscal Feminist, or just message me on Instagram.
Sounds great. Thank you for that. And we got a question about 401ks. So I know we're not allowed to give specific advice because we don't understand all the unique parameters of an individual circumstance, but could you tell some general thoughts about borrowing against your 401k, what you should be aware of, what you should consider, any red flags that you need to make sure that is communicated to someone who's asking that sort of question?
Right. So, look, In a perfect world, borrowing against your 401k is the last resort. I would really recommend not to do it. Sometimes it has to be done, and I understand that. So I don't know the specifics of the person's situation. And again, I'd be happy to kind of explore that with them as to why that's the possible option. You can do it. You are not generally allowed to contribute to it until you pay the loan back. And so it puts a hold on your retirement savings in that regard. And it just kind of is it's like a stop of what you're trying to do for the future. So it's out there as an option. And if you can't borrow in any other way, then without it being usurious, right? Where you're not being, there's no loan sharking involved in this, but you can't get a regular loan, or you can't do home equity loan, or you can't get a personal loan, then perhaps. But I would say, yes, it's an option. But I do think it puts a real kind of hump, like a stop in your retirement savings. And depending on how much you're going to borrow, it could take years to pay back. And it's really now every year that you're losing that tax-free compound growth of additional money you should be putting in to max out on your 401k. It's so important. It's more important than, I believe everyone should have a taxable account as well as a tax deferred account, because if you want to retire before you have to take RMDs, you should be kind of leaning more on getting those distributions from your taxable account, because it will be cheaper tax wise. And I hope that isn't confusing to people. I can explain that at another time, but yeah, you can do it, but I would really caution against doing it if you can find other routes to do it, because it stops you from growing it.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate how realistic you are, because sometimes people have to do what they have to do, but it's so important to really consider all your options, understand the risks, understand what
I've done it. I've done it before. And it was a long journey to pay it off, and I couldn't contribute. So then I'm now backing myself into a corner, because my long-term view becomes negative, because every year I can't contribute, or I can't add something to it because I'm trying to pay the loan off. It's just taking more and more money away from my retirement. And I am the classic case. Like I said, luckily for me, I've found this career and I was able to make it work, but I'm 64 years old and I will be working for another 10 years. A, because I love it, but B, even if I didn't love it, I am the classic case of playing catch up. And part of it was because of doing something like that. So I can tell you from personal experience, it would not be my first route if I could avoid it.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I have a two-part question here. So the first part of the question, how do you respond to a financial advisor who talks down to you because you're a woman? Are there any tips for navigating that, as question number one? And question number two, how do you find an advisor that is a fiscal feminist like we are?
Well, my first answer is I would say to the advisor, you're fired. That would be my first thing I'd say to them. Look, a leopard doesn't change its spots. And usually, if someone is not able to educate you without talking down to you and doesn't treat you as a stakeholder, and it is your money, by the way. So the problem is that, there are a lot of, again, older generation people involved in this career, but even, generally my whole thing is I want every single client I have, whether they're a man or a woman, to understand exactly what our strategy is and why we're doing it. And maybe, I have to repeat it multiple times, or I have to say it different ways for them to understand it. But if someone is talking down to you and they're not taking your questions and explaining it to you in a way that you understand, they're not taking the time to explore with you what you're thinking about, what you're fearful about, then this is not a good advisor. So you need to exit stage left and not use this advisor anymore, and start interviewing other advisors. And, obviously there's no handbook of, you can do your research online. I would say, obviously, if you are a woman, maybe trying to find a woman advisor, and I know they're few and far between, is a good way to go. You can always, look at reviews. I don't know how many advisors are reviewed really, but I would start by just asking them questions and having a candid conversation. And you will know off the bat whether that person is going to work with you in a team mode, or if they're going to say, hey, this is what your portfolio is going to look like. I'm not really going to tell you why. I've had so many people and a lot of women come into me and I become their advisor, and I'll say, well, do you know why your portfolio has been allocated this way? Like, what was the strategy? Because it doesn't look like there's much of one. And they'll say, I have no idea. And they have not had any conversations about this. And that is negligence, in my opinion, on the part of the advisor. We are fiduciaries at the Bahnsen Group because we are an independent advisor. When you go to advisors at big wirehouses like Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, they are at the suitability clause because they have a conflict of interest due to the fact that they sell product. And so we as fiduciaries, we must give you what is in your best interest. But if this is a human business, right? I'm going to become part of your family. I'm going to understand your hopes and desires and try to help you accomplish them. That is what a financial advisor should be doing. And if they're not listening to you, you need to fire them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so many questions to choose from. I wish I could answer them all, but I do want to tell everyone in the audience that we will have a follow-up email after this call where we'll share Kim's contact information, share more about her book, because I see a lot of questions about your book. People are going to be buying soon, Kim. I see that. And I want to focus on one question in particular as we close out today's session. So you spent a lot of time talking about prenups, finances, relationships, and just cohabitating, commingling, all of that. So what would you say to someone who feels like they missed the prenup? They're already married and they're starting to realize things about their financial situation as well as their relationship. What are some options they can consider?
So that's a really good question. And I think a lot of people are in the same boat. Depending on how you can accomplish this, and how open and your partner is, you can always get a post-nup. The only thing a post-nup can't address is alimony. So it can address settlement, but you can only address alimony, which I'm not a big fan of alimony if it can be avoided. I think settlements are much better. My problem was in my divorce is I had part of it was alimony, and that's what he stopped paying. And there was nothing I could do about it. It's like ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That's a whole other topic of conversation. So the first thing is you could explore post-nup and address the things that you are worried about. Second thing is you should start ring fencing money on your own. And I'm not telling anyone to be shady. This is how it is, open an account in your own name. Make sure you are putting money away that is for you and you alone. Have your own credit card. Check that credit report to make sure that the other person isn't up to hijinks. But more importantly, if you can't come to some agreement with this person to do a post-nup, then I would be marshaling all my resources and making my own singular financial situation. Now, the thing is, it depends on how it's funded. So if it's coming from your own work, then you could open an individual account and put the money that you earn on your own into that individual account and maybe set up your own separate property trust, and that would not maybe go into the community property realm. So you have to navigate around that a little bit. But even with community property, I would still be, trying to put money into my own, an account in my own name, set up my own credit, and then I would be doing a lot of forensic. This is some of my pre-divorce strategy. I tell people, do not, don't move don't hire the moving truck and start moving out and just say, throw the gauntlet down and say, I'm out, I want to leave, until you know everything that person owns and you understand all the accounts. Because once you start going down that path of divorce, if you have to subpoena information and discovery, people who used to tell you everything about their businesses and everything, like your husband, they will stop talking to you and they will not provide the information. So try to find out what's going on with the other person and get down to the nitty gritty of what accounts you can get your hands on and make sure that you have an electronic file or paper file of them, and then start establishing your own thing. That's the only way that's the best way to fight fire with fire. But if you can, I would move for a post-nup. And I have many people I know who have gotten post-nups because their situations, precisely to what we were talking about with Angela, have changed. They started making a lot more money than their husband or whatever. And they were like, wait a minute, I think I need a post-nup now. So I hope that answered the question. It depends on your specific circumstances, but those would be the two things I would mention.
Yes, thank you for that. And like I mentioned earlier, I will send Kim's contact information out in our follow-up email. Also, the survey will be coming up as soon as you exit out of our webinar, so we want to make sure you take the time to do that. But to round things off, I just wanted to thank everyone.
I'm sorry, can I just say one
Yes,
thing?
of course.
If you do buy the book on Amazon, The Fiscal Feminist, A Financial Wake-Up Call for Women, Kimberly Davis, if you buy it on Amazon, which is easy to do, if you could just do a review, good, bad, or indifferent, I would really appreciate it, because I keep being told I need more reviews. But I did win the best self-help book for independent publishers, and second silver award for finance and economics on the book. So any feedback from y'all about the book, I'd appreciate. Or also any topics that people would like me to address on podcasts, or I'm kind of getting interested in maybe even doing some podcasts where I interview real people about things. So please reach out to me, Kim at the Fiscal Feminist, or message me on Instagram. I'm more likely to read the Kim at the Fiscal Feminist because I'm checking my emails more than the Instagram stuff, but I do check the Instagram every day.
Well,
Great.
Kim, this was a fantastic session, and seriously, thank you so much. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for bringing us the idea. And I encourage all of you to go to the WISE website, because we have many podcasts there that expound on what things that Kimberly has talked about, estate planning, retirement strategy, tax strategies, on and on. Divorce. We recently had a very well-attended divorce panel.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. We'll let everyone go. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.